The stars above Varelia 9 burned quietly, unaware of the firestorm below. Captain Lyra Chen gripped the controls of her scout vessel, Ardent Light, staring down at the blue and green planet as waves of Zetherian plasma bombs rained from orbit. Her heart pounded. She had left the colony just 2 days ago to pick up deep core scanners. Now it was burning. She tried to contact command. Earth Central, this is Captain Chen of Recon Patrol Delta 6. Varelia 9 is under attack. I repeat, Varelia 9 is being bombed by Zetherian forces. Static. No answer. She slammed her fist against the console. Through the viewport, she could see fire and smoke rising from the planet's surface. Even from orbit, the devastation was clear, whole cities reduced to glowing scars. She ran a scan. No power signals, no defense grid, no emergency beacons. They were caught off guard. The Zetherians had struck fast and without warning. Varelia 9 was supposed to be secret, off the main charted lanes, known only to a few within Earth Command. It had been a place to rebuild, a quiet colony, families, scientists, children. Now, ashes. Lyra made her decision. She cut power to her transponder and dropped into the atmosphere, ignoring protocol. Her ship rocked as it entered the upper sky, the hull glowing red-hot. She guided it through the haze of smoke and lightning, dodging falling debris. "Hang on, Varelia," she muttered. "I'm coming." She landed on the outskirts of Sector C, near the old terraforming towers. The landing bay was gone, cratered and blackened. She stepped outside, her boots crunching on scorched metal and ash. Her helmet's HUD flickered from the heat and radiation, but the filters held. Dead silence. The wind carried fine dust and a strange hum, low and constant, like something deep underground had started to stir. She walked through the remains of the colony. Buildings were flattened, roads melted. A transport ship had crashed into a supply dome. Fires still burned, but there were no screams, no signs of life. Then she heard it, a soft groan, weak, human. She sprinted toward the sound and found a man, half buried beneath rubble. His uniform was burned, blood soaked through the fabric. "Hold on," she said, dropping to her knees. She cleared the debris, pulling out a medstim. The man looked up at her, barely conscious. His eyes were wide with fear. "They woke it," he whispered. "What?" Lyra asked, pressing the stim to his arm. "Under the ground. We didn't know. We didn't mean to." He coughed violently, blood spraying his lips. "Tell them. It's awake." He died before she could ask more. Lyra stood slowly, heart heavy. The hum in the air was louder now. A low vibration under her boots made her freeze. Something was moving below. She turned toward the central research sector, now a jagged ruin. Large chunks of earth had been blasted open. She saw symbols carved into the exposed rock, spirals, claws, wings. She didn't recognize the markings. They weren't human, and they weren't Zetherian either. Her scanner beeped suddenly. Motion detected. Subsurface anomaly. Mass 9,000 plus kg. Then silence. Then a roar. It came from deep below. A rumble so powerful the ground cracked beneath her. A gust of hot air burst from a fissure, knocking her off her feet. Then a shape rose from the earth. A massive winged creature covered in black metal and glowing with faint blue light. Its eyes burned like plasma cores. It looked like a dragon, something from myth, not science, but it was real, and it was angry. Lyra stared, frozen. The creature opened its mouth and let out a deafening scream. The sky answered with thunder. She turned and ran, her suit's servos straining to keep up. She had to get back to her ship. She had to tell Earth. The Zetherians hadn't just bombed a colony. They had awakened something far older, something dangerous, something alive. Lyra Chen sat in the cockpit of her ship, breath shaking, hands trembling on the controls. The ardent light was damaged. The emergency thrusters had barely lifted her off the burning ground of Varelia 9. Now she hovered at low altitude, hidden behind the smoke clouds rising from the shattered colony. Through the viewport, she could still see it. The creature, the dragon. It moved slowly across the wasteland below, wings stretched wide but not for flight. Instead, they pulsed with some kind of energy, bending the light around them. Its eyes glowed dimly as it searched, sniffed, hunted. It wasn't attacking now. It was watching, waiting. She zoomed the ship's sensors onto its shape. Metallic scales, organic tissue fused with alien tech, no known biological signature. Its body temperature pulsed like a living machine, cold, then suddenly hot, like it ran on something more than blood or energy. Not Zetherian, not human, something ancient. She opened the ship's logs and recorded her voice. Captain Lyra Chen, Recon Delta 6, recording at 0400 station time. Virilia 9 has suffered a full-scale bombardment by Zetherian forces. Civilian losses, unknown, likely complete. While investigating the ruins, I encountered an unknown entity, a creature, massive, possibly biological, possibly mechanical. Shape resembles traditional dragons from ancient Earth mythology. Origin unknown, threat level, extreme. She paused. What she said next felt heavy. Zetherian bombardment may have triggered its awakening. She ended the recording and leaned back, staring into the smoke again. Then she made a decision. She wasn't leaving yet. She needed answers. 10 minutes later, she stepped back onto the surface, moving quietly, suit sensors at full alert. The dragon had moved east, away from the central ruins. This gave her a narrow window to return to where she'd seen the markings. She followed a half-collapsed corridor to what was once Virilia's research hub. Her boots clanged on blackened metal. Everything smelled of burnt ozone and molten steel. She reached a wide fissure in the ground, the same one the dragon had crawled out of. The symbols on the walls were clearer here. Winged shapes, spiral patterns, constellation maps, not found in human archives. And something else, a large circular seal built into the stone. It wasn't just a ruin, it was a vault. Lyra scanned it. The seal was made of a compound she couldn't identify. Her laser couldn't even scratch it. She crouched beside it, placing her hand on the cool surface. Suddenly her visor glitched. A voice, soft and layered, echoed in her mind. Not in her ears, in her thoughts. Awakened too soon. You are not the ones we knew. She pulled her hand back, heart racing. Her vision cleared, but her mind buzzed. She looked again at the vault. It wasn't just a structure, it was a message, or maybe a warning. She moved deeper inside. Past the vault was a tunnel, half collapsed but stable. The ground turned from concrete to something older, carved stone, fused with glowing veins of crystal, alien architecture. At the end of the tunnel, she found a chamber. Inside were large tanks, some shattered, some still sealed. Within them floated shapes, creatures, all dragon-like, smaller than the one she saw above, but clearly from the same species. The tanks pulsed gently. The creatures weren't dead. They were asleep. A console at the far wall flickered with dim light. Human tech, but recent. She approached it. The screen lit up with Earth script. Project Duskhorn. Research log 118. She tapped the play button. A man's voice spoke. Calm, scientific. Entry log. We've confirmed that the creatures below are not natural. They appear to be living weapons, built by a pre-extinction alien race. Based on energy readings, they're dormant, held in stasis by a neuro-quantum field. The smallest ones respond to low-frequency vibrations, almost like they're listening. We've kept the project secret, but I worry. We've found something humanity wasn't meant to wake. The recording ended. Lyra stepped back. It all made sense now. The colonists had built Virilia 9 on top of an ancient alien vault. They discovered it during terraforming. Instead of reporting it, they studied it. Project Duskhorn was their name for it. But when the Zetherians bombed the colony, they cracked open the vault, and the dragons heard the war above. They woke. Lyra suddenly felt cold. This wasn't about colonization anymore. It wasn't even about war between species. This was about a forgotten weapon, a species designed to end war by destroying everything that created it. Outside, a roar echoed through the air again. Closer now. Lyra looked up through a cracked ceiling. The dragon was returning. She ran back through the tunnel, vault door behind her pulsing faintly. As she reached the open air, she turned just long enough to see the creature land nearby. wings folding in. It tilted its head, staring at her, not attacking, just watching. It knew she had been inside. Lyra climbed into her ship and sealed the hatch. The engines screamed to life. As she lifted into the smoke-filled sky, she looked down one last time at the scorched colony. Virilia 9 was gone, but what lived beneath it was not anymore. Commander Vorth Krell stood on the bridge of the Zetherian warship Zavok's Talon, hands clasped behind his back. The wide window before him showed a swirling image of Virilia 9, still wrapped in smoke and flame. A long scar of destruction cut across the planet's surface, a trail left by the dragon that now stalked the ruins below. He turned slowly as his science officer, a tall, thin Zetherian named Dresk, approached with a datapad. "We've confirmed the report," Dresk said, voice low. "The creature was not part of human technology. It is ancient, more powerful than anything we've seen. And it's not alone." Krell narrowed his eyes. "How many? We estimate at least 12 are still in stasis below the surface, possibly more, deeper down. The bombing cracked the outer layer of their vault. That's what released the first one." Krell didn't respond immediately. He turned back to the window. So the humans were hiding something after all. And not just a colony, weapons, creatures. He had seen the footage, something massive, with wings of fire and skin of metal. Its roar had disrupted their communication grid. It tore through buildings like paper, and yet it showed control. It didn't rampage. It chose what to attack. Krell smiled faintly. "We can use them," he said at last. "Harness the power of these beasts. Imagine what we could do if we controlled even one." Dresk hesitated. "Commander, with respect, we do not know their true nature. They are not machines. They appear to think, to feel. One wrong move. Enough," Krell snapped. "We are the Zetherian Empire. We have bent stars to our will. These creatures may have survived time, but they will kneel like the rest." He turned to the command deck. "Send a team to the surface. I want scans, samples. I want the hive located. Full security escort. Use psi-shields and grav pikes. Tell them not to fire unless attacked. These creatures are valuable." As his orders echoed across the bridge, Krell sat in his command chair. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. If the humans were foolish enough to build their colonies on alien bones, that was their mistake. But he would make it his opportunity. Far below, Lyra Chen flew low over the burned terrain, weaving through the smoke and ash. Her ship had taken a hit from falling debris earlier, and was barely holding together. She needed repairs, but she couldn't leave the planet just yet. She had to stop the Empire from making the same mistake. She replayed the research logs she had found in the vault. The humans on Virilia 9 had learned that the dragons were not simply biological. They were part of a psychic network, possibly linked across time and distance. They didn't respond to orders. They responded to intent, to emotion, to war. They were not just sleeping weapons. They were judges. She touched the side of her helmet and opened a wide-band distress signal, broadcasting to all remaining human outposts and rebel channels. "This is Captain Lyra Chen. Virilia 9 is lost, but something far worse has awakened. The Zetherians triggered it when they bombed us. They don't know what they've started. I've found evidence of at least a dozen more of these creatures under the surface. They're alive. They're watching. If we don't act now, the war won't matter. Nothing will survive." She paused. End of transmission. A red light blinked on her console. An incoming message. Encrypted. Origin unknown. She opened it. A male voice spoke, calm and smooth. "Captain Chen. My name is Cal, former science officer of the Zetherian fleet. I defected after the incident on Drax Theta. I've studied the creatures you just described. I believe I can help." Lyra stiffened. "A Zetherian? Why should I trust you?" she asked aloud, opening a channel. "Because I know what these things are," the voice replied. "We called them Kizan. In the old Zetherian tongue, it means the silent flame. They were feared even by our ancestors. They do not serve. They judge. And when judged, entire systems burned." Lyra hesitated. Cal continued. "If Commander Krell is there, he will try to control them. But the moment he uses force, the hive will awaken fully, not just the one you saw, all of them. If that happens, neither Zetherian nor human will survive. Meet me at grid point E17. I have data, proof. She considered. Time was short. The Empire wouldn't wait. Fine, she said. But if you're lying, I'll send your escape pod back to your fleet in pieces. I wouldn't blame you. Later that day, as Zetherian drop ships descended over Varelia's ruins, Commander Krell's recovery teams moved with care. They brought in psi dampeners to block psychic noise. They scanned the tunnels. They found the vault. One technician, eager to impress, placed a scanner on the seal and started cutting. The wall pulsed once, then again. Inside the sealed chamber, deep underground, rows of eyes blinked open in the dark. The air grew hotter. The dragons were listening. The sun over Varelia 9 was a dull smear behind the smoke and ash. Burned trees jutted from the ground like broken bones. The air was thick with dust. Lyra Chen stood on a jagged ridge, watching the horizon for movement. Her ship was hidden beneath a rock outcrop nearby, powered down to avoid detection. A low hum vibrated under her boots. Faint, steady, the same pulse she'd felt near the dragon vault. She turned as a figure approached, tall, cloaked in a black, patched-up environmental suit. His helmet was Zetherian design, angular and narrow. When he reached her, he stopped a few feet away and raised both hands slowly. "I'm Kale," he said through his helmet. "I came alone." Lyra didn't lower her weapon. "You said you had proof." Kale nodded. He pulled a small device from his pack and placed it on the ground. A hologram flickered to life. It showed a star map, systems marked with Zetherian symbols, then red streaks, crossing systems one by one. Explosions. Silence. "This is what happened when the Kirzone woke the last time," Kale said. "Our records speak of a race that tampered with them, a militaristic empire now extinct. The dragons destroyed them completely, not just the fleet, every world. Every trace. The Kirzone are not weapons, they are a verdict. When they rise, they erase." Lyra stared at the map, chilled. "And Commander Krell plans to what? Tame them. He believes he can control one, use it as a symbol, a weapon to break resistance. But he doesn't understand what they are. They judge intent, not commands. He'll provoke them." Lyra lowered her weapon. "We need to go back into the vault." Kale nodded. "I've found another entrance, a maintenance tunnel, collapsed but navigable." Together they moved across the wasteland, weaving through twisted wreckage and fallen towers. Overhead, Zetherian dropships loomed like black birds patrolling the sky. The two stayed low, slipping through shadows. After an hour, they reached a half-buried facility. It was smaller than the main vault, its entrance sealed behind warped metal and vines. Kale placed a fusion cutter on the frame. The door hissed and peeled open. Inside was darkness. Their boots echoed through the narrow tunnel. The air grew colder as they descended. The humming returned, louder now, not mechanical, alive, like breathing. They reached a vast underground hall. The walls were carved from smooth stone fused with veins of pulsing crystal. Glowing symbols floated just above the surface, shifting slowly. Lyra touched one. It vanished, then reappeared. Different. "They respond to thought," Kale said. "Not touch." In the center of the chamber stood a large platform, part altar, part machine. Resting on it was something like a throne, shaped like a dragon's head. Kale stepped forward. "This is the mind core. It links to the hive. The Kirzone communicate through it, when they choose to. We may be able to reach them, if they're willing." Lyra hesitated. "How do you know this?" Kale looked down. "Because once we tried. We found a dormant Kirzone core on a moon in the Dathros sector. We activated it by accident. The moon cracked in half. I was the only one who escaped. I've spent years trying to understand what went wrong. The answer is simple. They don't want to be used." Lyra stepped to the core. The symbols on the wall brightened. The hum became a whisper. "Who speaks?" She gasped. She wasn't hearing it. She was thinking it. The message bloomed in her mind like a dream. "I'm Lyra Chen," she said aloud. I don't come to command. I come to warn silence. Then we know. We watch. The fire is close. Another voice echoed behind her, sharper, darker. They dig. They take. The verdict begins. Kale stepped back. The hive is waking. Lyra turned to him. We have to stop Krail. If he opens that vault fully. A deep tremor shook the ground. The lights above flickered. Stone cracked. From far down the tunnel, a roar sounded. Louder than before. No longer distant. Lyra and Kale ran. As they emerged back into the open air, they saw smoke rising from the east. Zetherian shuttles parked near the vault, soldiers drilling into the sealed chamber. From this distance they could see beams of light piercing into the underground. They're breaching the main chamber, Kale said. Lyra raised her binoculars. One of the vault doors was opening. Inside movement, huge shapes, unfurling wings, glowing eyes. It was too late. They've triggered a full awakening, she said. Every Kizan in the vault, they're waking up. The sky turned darker as a shape rose into the clouds, wings spread wide, glowing veins burning across its body. Then another, and another. The dragons were no longer sleeping, they were rising. Lyra turned to Kale, eyes cold. Get your data, get your maps. We have one last chance to stop this. Kale nodded. Behind them the sky filled with thunder. The skies over Virilia 9 turned black as ash and wind swirled like a storm ready to burst. But it wasn't the weather. It was the wings, huge, metallic, alive, rising from the cracks of the earth. One by one, the Curzon emerged from their vaults, awakened by Zetherian arrogance. Commander Vorth Krail stood at the edge of the main vault, his command armor gleaming beneath the dark clouds. Around him, teams of heavily armed Zetherian soldiers aimed their pulse rifles into the open chamber, where steam and fire poured from below. Drones hovered, capturing every moment. One of the scouts ran up, panic in his voice. Commander, the creatures are rising, multiple signatures, large, fast. We've already lost 2 units burned alive. Krail waved him off. Hold the line. Focus fire if they breach the perimeter. We only need 1 alive. Behind him, Dresk, the science officer, shook his head. We should leave, Commander. This is not control. This is awakening. You've triggered the hive. They aren't confused. They're angry. Krail turned slowly, eyes cold. This is our chance to break the humans, the rebellion, the outer systems. They all fear monsters. Let them see who controls the monsters. Dresk said nothing, but deep down he knew. No one would control the Curzon. Then the first dragon came into view, soaring up from the vault with a roar that cracked the sky. Its wings cut through the air like scythes. Its body glowed with flowing energy, veins of molten light pulsing along its spine. It circled once, then locked eyes on the Zetherian soldiers below. It dove. The beam of heat that followed wasn't fire. It was something worse. A blast of raw energy that melted metal and bone alike. The front line disintegrated in a blink. Then another dragon rose, and another. Krail shouted, "Open fire!" The Zetherian troops responded, launching plasma bursts and grav pikes, but they did nothing. The dragons twisted midair, dodging with impossible speed. One slammed into the ground, crushing a dropship like it was made of paper. The earth shook. Across the ridge, Lyra, Chen and Kallo watched in silence. Lyra's jaw tightened as she lowered her binoculars. It's happening. Just like the hive said, this isn't an attack, it's a verdict. Krail checked his scanner. 3 dragons are fully airborne. 4 more are emerging. The vault is wide open. Krail's forces are trying to fight, but they won't last. Lyra turned to him. Is there any way to reach the hive mind again? Can we communicate, like before? Krail hesitated. Not directly, not now. They've entered battle state. That means the hive is fully active. Their thoughts are focused on destruction. They've judged the Zetherians as threats. Then we have to change their judgment. She ran back to her ship, powered it up, and lifted off the ground. Krail followed her in the co-pilot's seat. linking the comms and scanning the energy signals. Lyra flew straight toward the vault, weaving past falling debris and glowing beams of heat. Below, the battlefield was chaos. Burning wreckage, screams, ash falling like snow. Dragons flew in tight spirals, cutting down anything that moved. But when Lyra's ship passed over them, they paused. One of the larger dragons, the one with silver plating and deep red eyes, looked straight at her cockpit. It didn't attack. "They recognize you," Kael said quietly. "You touched the mind core. You made contact. You're marked." Lyra flipped on her loudspeaker, switched to wide-frequency broadcast, and shouted, "Stop. This war isn't ours anymore. The ones who woke you are dying. You've punished them, but others live. People who never meant you harm. Children, scientists, survivors. You judge war, then judge fairly. Nothing. Then movement." The silver dragon flew up toward them, slowly, wings still. It hovered outside the ship, staring into the cockpit. Lyra didn't blink. She unbuckled her straps and stood, pressing her hand to the glass. "I'm not your enemy." Her ship shook, but not from impact. It was something else, a presence, a voice in her mind, the same as before. "You see." Lyra's vision filled with fire, then faded. She saw Krail standing alone, his troops gone, his armor scorched. He looked up at the sky, terrified for the first time in his life. Then came the final roar. A dozen dragons dove together. The air turned white. Then silence. When it cleared, there was nothing left of Krail. Back at the vault, the dragons circled once, then one by one returned to the ground. They did not attack again. They landed slowly, folding their wings, watching from a distance, silent, breathing, waiting. Lyra landed her ship near the ruins of the vault. Smoke still curled into the air. She stepped out, surrounded by the still burning remains of Zetherian craft. Kael joined her, shaking his head in disbelief. "You stopped them." "No," she said. "They stopped themselves. I just reminded them who they were." The wind picked up, carrying the smell of scorched earth. But for the first time since the bombing, there was no fire, no screaming, only silence. The Curzon were awake, but they had chosen to wait. 3 days had passed since the firestorm. The skies over Varelia 9 were clearer now, though a faint haze still lingered from the scorched earth. Ash still drifted down like soft snow. Burnt trees stood like frozen shadows. But the air was quiet. The dragons, Curzon, had returned to the ground, scattered across the valley near the vault. They no longer moved in anger. They rested, wings folded, eyes half closed, watching. Lyra Chen stood on a bluff overlooking the valley, her suit open at the collar, helmet off. Her face was tired but calm. She had not slept much since the battle, but the quiet brought a strange peace. The world felt like it was holding its breath. Kael stood beside her, arms folded, scanning the dragons below. They weren't gathered in ranks. They did not build. They did not speak. But there was no confusion in their stillness. It was choice. "They could leave," Kael said quietly. "They could fly to other colonies. They could burn every city on every world. But they haven't." Lyra nodded. "Because they were never meant to destroy everything, only what needed to be judged." She looked out across the valley, where a silver dragon, larger than the rest, with cracked armor along its side, slept curled around the broken stone of the vault entrance. Its breathing was slow and steady. It looked peaceful. "They're waiting," she said. Kael glanced at her. "For what?" "For us," she said. "For what we'll do next." Earth Command had responded the moment her message broke through. The relay station in the outer system picked up her report, along with full visual data: dragons, the destroyed Zetherian fleet, the vault ruins. Shock turned to panic. Panic turned to fear. Then came a voice from Earth itself, through the encrypted channel. "Do not engage. Do not provoke. Do not return fire." Humanity, for once, had learned to listen. A ceasefire followed. Zetherian Command, what was left of it, declared Commander Krail's death a catastrophic overreach. They recalled all remaining fleets from the sector. Quietly, quickly, the war didn't end, but it paused. And in that pause, something shifted. By the end of the week, Varelia 9 was no longer called a colony. It was called the Threshold. No one approached without permission. No ships entered the skies without broadcasting intent. The few that did come were quiet, cautious. Scientists, observers, peace envoys. Lyra remained. She set up a small camp in the hills, a communications tower, and a shelter made from old colony ruins. She became something more than a captain. She became a link, a bridge between two worlds. Some called her a guardian, others called her reckless. She didn't care. At night she walked near the dragons. Sometimes they stirred as she passed, sometimes they didn't. But one always watched, the silver one, the first to rise. She never gave it a name. She didn't need to. Names were for things to be owned or commanded. These were neither. One night, she sat by a burned tree with Kale. The stars above were sharp and clear. "Do you think they dream?" she asked. Kale looked up. Maybe they remember the last time they woke. Maybe they hope they won't need to again. They sat in silence for a while. Then from the valley, a deep voice echoed, not in sound, but in thought. "We sleep not in weakness, but in warning." Lyra didn't move. Kale whispered, "Did you hear that?" She nodded. Another thought followed. "The fire listens, but if war calls again, we will answer." The next morning, a single ship arrived from Earth Command. No weapons, no escort, a simple transport. A general stepped out, tall and proud, but respectful. He approached Lyra, hands open, helmet under his arm. "You've done what no fleet could do," he said. "You stopped the dragons. You gave us a chance." Lyra shook her head. "No," she said. "They stopped us. I just listened." He looked out at the dragons sleeping in the valley. "What do we do now?" Lyra answered without looking at him. "We don't build weapons here. We don't build cities. We remember, and we teach others to remember. That's all." He nodded. "And if they wake again?" Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then it means we've failed." Weeks later, messages from outer colonies arrived. Stories spread across systems. Dragons, silent and terrible, now watching over a quiet world. And humanity, for the first time in a long while, slowed down. Treaties were signed. Troops pulled back. Not out of peace, but out of fear, out of respect. The fire hadn't vanished. It had simply gone back to sleep. But everyone knew it could wake again. And next time, it might not show mercy.